Welcome. My name is Jim Butler with Marcum Wealth, and we have an exciting show for you today. And my co-host today is Dave Emery with Planning Capital Management. Welcome, Dave.
Well, welcome. Good to see you again, Jim. How you doing?
Good. Well, we're obviously remote, so we're doing what I think a lot of us have become used to over these past couple of years, but it's convenient and we can jump right into the show. So before we introduce our special guest tonight, why don't we chat a little bit about some issues that are relevant. And again, even though we don't like to date ourselves with any of these comments, certainly the topic of inflation is going to be with us for a while. That ties into, monetary policy with regards to what the Fed is doing. And so what kind of conversations are you having with your clients with regards to inflation?
I'll tell you, inflation, I think the press initially was saying how it was going to be transitory. It certainly does not seem to be transitory. The price of food and the price of gasoline, you look over the last, since the beginning of 2021, has done nothing but gone up. And I'm definitely hearing it from clients, with regards to it's more and more difficult to make to kind of stay within the family budget. Their lifestyle has needed to change a little bit to accommodate that. And maybe the good news is through COVID, a lot of people are working remotely and they don't feel the full impact of certainly the fuel prices by just for the mere fact they're not traveling as much for going to work. There's still a lot of my clients are still somewhat remote, or the business model has changed where that's kind of some type of remote working is going to be the norm. It should be interesting to see what happens in the next 18 months with regards to inflation in general.
Do you have a sense as to how you or your clients believe the Fed will respond in their attempts to kind of keep inflation under control and interest rates?
Mm-hmm. I think, the Feds, as they kind of deleverage their balance sheet, its interest rates can do nothing but go up. So, if you look over the last, history of the last 20 years, we are in a very low interest rate environment. So, it's definitely, there's really no way else to go but up. It's just a matter of how quickly. So. How about your clients? What are you hearing from your clients on inflation and interest rates? A lot of the, the refinance scene is, it seems like anybody that could refinance probably has refinanced, but there's still, the interest rates are pretty darn low compared to what historically they've been.
Right. Well, I do agree with some comments that we've heard with regards to why interest rates could remain low a little bit longer, and at least with regards to what the government is going to try to do, and certainly the Fed, and that's because of the amount of debt that they're carrying. And with the stimulus packages, for lack of a better term, that are still on the books and are part of law right now.
Mm-hmm.
In order to fund that, there's motivation for the public officials to keep interest rates low. Again, they don't control what the market does.
Right.
But I do think a normally sloped interest rate curve, upward sloping curve, with short-term rates lower, long-term rates higher, is probably going to be with us for a while for exactly those reasons.
Right.
But I agree with you. I think the full impact of inflation is slowly being felt. It's like when you haven't been exercising for a while, and then you go back into the gym, and all of a sudden your muscles start to hurt because you haven't exercised them, and slowly they get back in shape. And,
right.
We may experience something like that with interest rates, and consequently, from an investment strategy standpoint, Dave, that plays into any bond allocations or fixed interest allocations that you may recommend to clients. So do you have any strategies that you're working with to address the bond side of the portfolio?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd preface it by everybody ought to check with their own financial advisor or planner. Yeah, to your point, as interest rates go up, the face value of bonds adjust down. So, one of the thoughts that we've had, one of the strategies we've talked with clients about is the consideration of large company value stocks that pay a dividend. I mean, so you still get some income off of that. As opposed, it kind of feels a little bit like a fixed income, even though it's not, and somewhat of a hedge against inflation too. So, I mean, that's something that again, I chat with your financial advisor. But that is, it's not a fixed income. It is an equity, but it's something to might maybe consider.
Right. Well, one approach that we're taking is along the lines of diversification. So even on the bond side, to not rely exclusively on money markets, because of course those rates are rock bottom,
Right.
but rather don't be afraid in some maybe modest increments to employ things like high yield debt instruments in order to get a little bit higher interest rates. To use investment grade credit for a portion of, say, safer investments, and even mortgages, because there again, at least you're getting some yield,
Right.
and over time, a diversified bond portfolio should provide ideally the ballast that it's intended to provide, while at least generating some decent yield.
Right. Yeah, good point.
So, well, why don't we move to the question?
Okay.
We have Lance Rubin in Philadelphia is asking about, could you provide some tips on financial planning for college costs?
Oh boy, yeah.
So here we go.
There we go. Yeah. So, college costs. I mean, that's they continue to go. Price of college continues to go up. I guess what I'd say the best thing to do is to have a plan and to start early. And what I mean by that is when your student is in ninth grade or 10th grade in high school, begin talking about what the family can afford. Who's going to participate in paying for college. What I mean by that is, are mom and dad going to help pay? The students going to pay, or other family members? A lot of times I'm seeing grandparents have an interest in paying for college. So who's going to be participating in paying for it? Have a plan for how much debt the family is willing to take on to pay for college, and have a plan on how that debt's going to be paid back. There's many times I see families that when students go to college, they take these loans out, and then they're shocked with what they have to pay the payments are on paying them back, and they're really not prepared for it. So those are some areas, along with financial aid. If you can qualify for need-based financial aid, work with somebody that can help you properly report your finances. I think that's very important. A lot of times people say you can do it yourself. I think it's important to solicit help if you don't feel confident with that, and apply it early, because it's I usually say it's the school's money and it's their choices on awarding it, and the people that are proactive, and apply early, may do better than others that don't. It just makes sense to apply early. So those are a couple things to consider.
Right. Good. Okay. Great. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for that insight. And if you have a question that you'd like our panel to answer, we'd love to hear from you. And here's the way that you can send that question to us.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS,
Today's special guest is James Jan with Asia Marketing and Management. Welcome, James.
Hi, Jim. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. And so as we move into a conversation with you and understand your services and areas of expertise, why don't we start out with just a brief introduction to what you do, who your clients are, how you serve them, and let's use that as our starting point.
Very good. I used to be a college professor, but after 3 years of teaching, I joined Academic Press in New York City, which was a part of Harcourt Brace Yovanovitch, a Fortune 500 publishing company. And my job as a manager was to market the company's scientific, technical, medical, and professional books and journals, very high level, to China and Southeast Asia. I joined the company in 1981. I basically resigned to become a consultant in 1983. And my role when I set up my business, my practice, was to help American companies export 100% American-made products and services to China and other parts of Asia, but mostly China. And also, this is my 38th year of practice. I'm still going strong.
That's great. That's great. So how do you encourage your clients to seek long-term relationships in your work with them?
Well, Jim, actually my motivation is to encourage people like me, solo practitioners, and service providers, very small companies, boutique consulting firms, because I've noticed, looking at my past 38 years of providing services to clients, I have found that many solo practitioners shy away from asking for long-term contracts or asking for retainers, however you phrase the word, from their respective clients. And I have benefited so much once I learned how to ask for long-term contracts. I would like to share my experience so that I hope that some people out there who need this encouragement will wake up.
So what's a typical obstacle as to why somebody would not want to ask for a long-term contract or arrangement?
There are many reasons. And when I look back at when I was 34 years old, starting my practice, I think the first reason was for beginners. It was exciting just to get work because there was so much fear that you might not get paying clients. And as a result, just getting work itself was exciting. And so you bill by the hour, which is very normal. And most people just decided to keep on doing it without thinking about the downside of only billing by the hour and not billing by the project, or much better, billing by an annual contract or on an annual retainer basis.
So billing by the hour is, what are some of the pitfalls of doing that? It's just, I hate to say it's not very good, but what are some of the pitfalls?
Well, there are quite a number. First of all, billing by the hour, by the way, is standard. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. And many clients, many prospects that come to us are likely to just want us to work on a project. So don't get me wrong. I'm not telling every solo practitioners to get long-term contracts, but they have to be aware that if they want to have a long and successful and profitable practice, they should try to find ways to not just do billable, hourly billable basis work, but asking for longer contracts. I can name quickly the several kind of not too good aspects, which is when you bill by the hour, you are actually like being a hunter-gatherer. You go into the forest for the food tonight. And it's very difficult because sometimes even if you get a client that pays you a lot, you're working on a good project, that when you are working on a project, you are so absorbed, you forget marketing yourself. And when the work is over, it may be weeks, it may be even a couple of months when you don't have any clients. That is what most service providers call feasts and famines. That's the most damaging one. David.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Hey, James, can you give us an example without naming a customer or a client where it works to the advantage of the client to engage in a long-term contract? In other words, what kind of either product or service might, have you helped the client with and then encourage them to secure a long-term arrangement?
Jim, sure. I can give you two examples. Again, I'm not going to name the names of my clients. Really, I want people to know, personally, I was not a believer in asking for long-term contracts myself. It took me 10 years to pick up courage to ask a client, a 10-year running client for a retainer. I got it. And it took another 5 more years, meaning a total of 15 years, to ask my second biggest client for a retainer, for an annual contract, instead of billing by the hour, billing by the month. And that's why I want to share with people who might be are still thinking the way I was thinking when I was much younger. That's not really a very viable way of running a profitable and satisfactory practice. And in terms of types of companies, we service providers who actually get business are likely to be in such a diverse range of fields. There's no playbook for everybody. One has to come up with one's own playbook. But I know this may not be a satisfactory answer, but let me give some specifics here. For my biggest and oldest client, I worked for the client for 10 years, 10 continuous years, billing month by month, but billing by the hour, so that I kind of knew what I needed to do and how much time I gave this particular client of mine. So in my 10th year, after a midlife crisis, after all the experiences of feasts and famines, I remember one day I got out of bed and I said to myself, James, ask for a retainer, for an annual contract to be renewed annually. And if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And so I decided to really go to my client and ask for it, and I got it.
So when you talk long-term contracts, how long-term is it? You mentioned a yearly renewable. Is it multi-year, or how does that work?
I'm glad you mentioned that. My oldest client, and I'm still working for them. This is our 37th year now. In the beginning, I was asking for 1 year annually renewable contract. It was so funny. It was the client during a down cycle in their firm's history, when also selling to China was very difficult. They gave me a 3-year contract on their own. And not only did they give me a 3-year contract, they upped my consulting fee for me.
That's right. That's great. Wonderful. Yeah.
So I just want people to know these clients, these prospects exist.
So when you ask a prospect, how does that work with asking a prospect for a long-term contract when they really, they haven't done business with you yet? And I guess one thing if you have a reputation in the marketplace, but if, it would seem tough to get somebody to come on as a prospect to sign a multi-year contract, I guess is what I was trying to say.
You are absolutely right, David. This is a very fair and very strict question. It took me 10 years to learn my craft. In other words, what I need to do to get an American company to have products that the Chinese will buy, even though there are lots of copycats in China. And throughout those 10 years, I knew exactly why my client wanted me and how I could serve them in a way that, I would be more like a fire department, an insurance company, a health insurance company. In other words, they just could not tell when I would be needed. That's why they kept me on month after month and year after year. And so to answer your question, after 10 years of working for one and 15 years of working for another, and then finally succeeding in putting my foot down, essentially saying nicely and also with concrete details to both clients. I mean, you have seen me work for you for 10 years and then the other for 15 years. You basically know what I'm doing, how much time I have put on. So in a way, I also do not have any problem pricing myself because I have data. I have records of how much they spend on me. So basically, they kind of, all they needed to do was to come up with a budget. And I just wanted that annual budget instead of like a no promise, like any day they can get rid of me or I can walk out on them. And so then finally, let me get to one point, David. If you practice, first of all, you have to be good in what you're doing.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, it really makes great sense because no client is stupid enough to use any of us. If we just BS, it's not going to work out at all.
Right.
They let us build them not because they love us, but because they actually benefit. So they're not dumb. We don't want dumb clients. Now, to answer your point, so once you have 15 years of experience and craft, and once you have one and then two clients, you begin to feel that now you grow up and you kind of know which particular type of company you want to commit to for yourself. And then you are also asking these prospects, not everybody. I have worked for more than 100 companies, big and small. So I don't ask all 100 companies for retainers, for long-term contracts at all. I only ask for a handful of them.
I see.
And so after 15 years of doing your stuff, being a craftsman, being an artist, being a good consultant, being a good expert, you kind of pick up maturity. You basically say, we're not dating anymore. It's just a marriage. You either marry me or we don't sleep together at all.
Yeah.
Hey, James, let me shift the conversation a little bit and ask what might be on a lot of people's mind, particularly today. And it has to do with relations between U.S. and China. And, I think you're dealing mostly in the private sector versus in the public sector.
Correct.
So have you found the current relations between the two countries any different today than, say, 5 years ago?
Not much different from 5 years ago, although it has gotten much worse. But if you are saying 30 years ago, 35 years ago, I think we are in some kind of a valley, really bottom, I would say, of a valley. If I were to start my practice again, I had to be much more foolhardy than I was when I was 34 years old.
So is that another way to say that you might engage in working with clients that are broader than China, maybe throughout even greater Europe, would you say?
No, I would still focus on what I know the best, which is about China, about Chinese character, about the Chinese mindset, about all the cultural and business tricks and practices that people just do. And I think it's very important. It's very important that we, as good service providers, as experts, do not veer off course and try to be an expert in a field that we are not. That's very dangerous.
So what advice would you pass on to somebody who's maybe inside 10 years of developing relationships in consulting? What type of advice would you pass on to them, given what you've shared with us about long-term contracts and stay focused in their area of expertise?
I think for beginners, you should just, do the normal thing, billing by the hour, billing by the month, and try not to right away ask for longer term contract, but rather focus on finding out why are you good? In what ways are you good? Why do the clients want you? In what way will the client understand your value? And over time, keep in mind that when the moments are ripe, after 5, 7, certainly I hope not more than 10 years of practice, for those clients that you truly want to work with, ask them for a long-term contract or an annual retainer renewable. There's one important thing that many beginners will not know, out of fear that if you ask a prospect, they will just walk away from you. One should not be that fearful, because once you learn the way to ask for a long-term contract and to justify that, and you get it, after a while, you are able to smell out, if there is such a word. You are able to decipher. You are able to decide, to understand what type of client do you want. And believe me, once you have 2 long-term contracts, getting the third one is easier. There were moments when I had 5 ongoing long-term clients, in addition to doing billable short-term based work. So the 2 words for my advice: no fear. No fear.
Good. That's great advice. James, we're going to wind down here. We've covered a lot, and we could continue talking, obviously. So thank you very much for your insight and your experience. And I'd even go as far as to say your wisdom, because certainly close to 40 years of experience qualifies you to say you've gained some wisdom that somebody else could benefit from. So thank you for tuning in to our show today, and be sure to tune in for the next show. Our guest is Tia Lyles Williams, who's the founder and CEO of Lucas Pi Bio and Heliplex. It's a firm in the biomedical field, and it certainly appears to be very interesting, particularly given the current state of affairs that we're in today. So with that, thank you again for today, and be good stewards of your money.